We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube because the Chicago Bears won. And also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. Just simply download the podcast, search for Unbearable Sports. What is good, everybody? I already see Shy Drax out there in the comments. Hope you are doing well, my friend. Lots of stuff to go through because the Bears end up winning 24-17 over the Tennessee Titans in Chicago. And we already know there is 1.5 million things that we have to cover on this show because there was ups, there was downs. I mean, there was downs, then there was ups, and then there was some downs sprinkled in. The offense entirely did not look great, but really the story is the defense. So this is the kind of the initial reaction that I want to just kind of break down what we think about this whole crazy game where the Bears didn't even surpass 150 yards on offense, but the defense essentially bails them out. So let's talk a little bit about this game before we get into the big pieces. So yeah, the story is defense. And I also agree with Shy Drax in the comments. It is that tale of the two halves. You have the first half where nothing really was happening. Bears down 17-3. And then later on in the game, Bears come back and score 24 unanswered points to ultimately end up winning this game. And Caleb Williams, not a great look to all of this. But also too, I think it even started out with the inactives because to me, the inactives, it was interesting because we saw Karan Amagaji inactive, which, you know, he's one of the only swing tackles that we have on this team. Roshan Johnson inactive, Pickens inactive, Domrob inactive, Tyler Scott inactive. And I think that was something that was kind of interesting because we knew Pickens was banged up, that he probably wasn't going to be out there, but Roshan and Tyler Scott were two that I was a little interested in. And as to why were they out? Because later on, we saw Keenan Allen get banged up a little bit and kind of go, okay, now who's that fourth wide receiver that can come in if one of those players does in fact get injured? And with Roshan out, we saw Travis Homer getting a lot more of the a lot of the third down plays, which I thought was interesting. Roshan's been banged up, but Roshan has been a reliable pass blocker. So I wanted to talk about those inactives first before we get into the main meat and potatoes. Because another thing that I want to bring up too is during this week, I was trying to think of I want to put together another show for y'all, like another segment inside of this show that y'all can enjoy a little bit. So I was thinking about like a film breakdown, but I'm like, there's so many of those out there. And also I want something that for the listeners that you can actually, it's enjoyable for a listener because I'm a podcast listener. I listen to all my podcasts. So that's my jam. So I sympathize for all y'all that are listening that might just be nodding your heads right now that we don't have a big connection, but thank you for listening to the show. But with this, I think that the big thing is what I'm going to be pushing out is y'all seem to really love the advanced analytics. So after this show, maybe on Monday or Tuesday, I'll put together an advanced analytics segment for us to go through just to dig deeper into all those additional pieces. I still have some for this show, but I really want that to be the focus on what do the stats say that the Bears were doing and the analytics say that the Bears were doing during this game rather than, you know, the classic film breakdowns that a lot of people end up doing nowadays. So something to look forward to this week. And then would love to hear y'all's feedback on it just to see if that's something y'all want me to continue to do. But let's go through the basic stats. And also, Shy Drax, I agree. Hit that like button. And I love your question about did Booker play? That's something that we'll talk about with the defense because the defense had some interesting lineups. We'll just say that. So let's get into the stats, the basic stats, right? Not the advanced metrics, anything like that. When we look at the stats, we know Caleb Williams only throws 93 yards and 64 total yards passing because he was sacked for two times for a negative 29 yards. QBR of 22.3, rating of 55.7, and a 14 of 29 throwing the ball. Not pretty at all. Then rushing the ball, DeAndre Swift, someone who I was really pumped up about because we heard all this amazing stuff. 10 carries for 30 yards. His long was a 20-yard, run. Ultimately, if you subtract that 20-yard run, you have 9 carries for 10 yards. The ground game did not get it going. And also you see Khalil Herbert, 2 carries, 4 yards. Homer, 2 carries for 10 total yards, 5 yards a carry. And Caleb Williams, 5 carries, 15 yards. But keep in mind, 3 of those were in the victory, or 2 or 3 of those were in the victory formation. But on the flip side, defense only allowed 104 passing yards total and 140 yards on the ground, giving up a 5.4 yards a carry, which not great. Tajay Spears had 5.3 yards a carry and Tony Pollard 5.1. Also receiving, DJ Moore, your leading receiver, 5 catches, 36 yards. Behind him, Keenan Allen, 4 catches, 29 yards. Cole Kmet only getting 1 target and 1 catch. Rome Odunze being targeted 4 times and only getting 1 catch. Then you flip over to the defense, the tail of the defense, TJ Edwards, 15 tackles, Jaquan Brisker, 10 tackles, but then Darrell Taylor, 8 tackles, 2 sacks. Javon came in with a sack as well, but ultimately Darrell Taylor was the big name today, making his presence felt with those sack numbers. But ultimately, coming away with 3 sacks, it felt like more. I had to literally look at my screen and say, I felt like we had more out there. I felt like we had more sacks. Turns out, we only had 3. So I thought that the defense obviously played phenomenal, played great, but let's start talking about this a little bit more. And then also Shy Jack saying, "Oh, advanced analytics stream." Yeah, don't worry. I think that'll be fun. I think that'll be cool to kind of have that episode for y'all that just kind of gets deeper into the analytics of all that. Also, Jeff, what's good, my friend? Hope all is well, saying great offense wins to game, great defense wins championships. I like that. Also, Jason, what's going on? Saying bear down, defense looks elite. I'll give offense some time. Liked how Swift looked. So let's get into this defensive stats because I want to kind of go up to what Shydrax, what you kind of pointed out with Booker. Because here's the funny thing, right? My bold prediction was that Austin Booker was going to get 2 sacks. Well, Austin Booker played 6 total snaps in the entire game, which I'm a little disappointed to see because everybody loves Austin Booker. Everybody loves him out here, and he's been very good. But, if you look at the other defensive snap counts, Walker had led the defensive line with 53 snaps. And then you have Andrew Billings getting 45 snaps, Dexter with 42, and Darrell Taylor with 38. And I don't know, for some reason, I left Montez Sweat off of this. Montez Sweat did not have more snaps than Walker. I want to say it might have been like 48 or 45. So I want to actually just call this out real quick because we had a change in guard with the defensive coordinator. And we always said this on the show. The Bears like to sub out the hockey lines for the defensive line. Well, at least they like doing that when Washington was not the DC. What we saw now is something completely different. The Bears are just subbing in people that have the hot hand, subbing in different packages, and the defensive line itself, that's something that I thought was really impressive because we saw Walker do what we've always talked about, putting him at D tackle. And I thought that looked more of a natural fit on those third downs. You saw him generate some pressure. But also, I thought that DeMarcus Walker had a very good game. This is the most pressure we've ever seen him generate at that left tackle position. Yes, going against J.C. Latham, a rookie, but we never saw DeMarcus Walker generate this much pressure, look this good. So it's nice to hear that, hey, DeMarcus Walker is healthy and he's looking like this. And when he's on the interior, going against Peter Skoronski and other, like we said, their interior wasn't half bad, but we saw Walker generate pressure. And let's see, I actually have Walker stats. I think he had 2 quarterback hits. So even though that he didn't register a sack, the guy was getting back there. The guy was playing very well. But the person that kind of stole the show was Darrell Taylor. And the trade's already a success because he basically won this game is my whole takeaway because of the strip sack, because of the constant pressure, because of getting into the quarterback's face. Now, I want to watch the tape again and just kind of see how was he against the run, But yet again, this is a good run defense team. I mean, we'll talk about the stats later with that. But Darrell Taylor really showed up, getting 2 sacks, and somebody that just was consistently wrecking havoc and played on kind of both sides, left and right sides of that defensive line. And that's why we didn't see Booker out there. So even though I'm disappointed we didn't see Booker, and I predicted 2 sacks out of him, I'll kind of call a little asterisk on this because Darrell Taylor comes in and gets 2 sacks. But that's what you want to see out of your bench player. But also, too, Billings getting a lot more snaps as well, getting 45 snaps. And Billings, another person that was consistently getting back there, consistently pushing. He made Peter Skoronski look terrible because he just kept just freaking manhandling him and just bulldozing him through. And speaking of that, Javon Dexter, there was a play he played at the defensive end spot. I don't know if anyone else saw this because I'm like, wait, is that Javon at D end? And he literally just tosses Petit Ferrer, just shows off his absolute, what we say, the gorilla strength, where he's just got that next level strength where you see him, just a big dude, but then he just has that next level strength to him where he can just toss someone, he can just flip him aside. And that's what he did with Petit Ferrer. Awesome stuff there. And it just feels good that the defensive line, who is the big question mark. Now, I'm not here to say defensive line woes, they're done. We should never talk about it again. But this was one of the first times that we took advantage of what was on paper a poor offensive line. That's something to be happy about. That's something you can hang your hat on because we didn't do that last year. Because I remember doing so many preview shows going, the tackles are bad. We should be able to take advantage of them. And we never did. And now we did. Now we took advantage of that and we're consistently bringing pressure, consistently looking good. Defense looks great. And also, even though that we have the advanced metric show that we'll be doing later, negative 0.29 EPA per play, which is very good for this defense, or that's what their offense put up. So very good. 5.3 plays per drive. And when you look at the final drive, this is the second half. The second half, defense shows out. Blocked punt for a touchdown. 3 and out. Then a fumble. Then an interception. Then a 3 and out. And then another interception. That is what the defense needed to do. The defense showed out. And, this was not supposed to be the same old Bears. But man, it's fun to watch the defense play well. That's the same old Bears. That's the Bears that I grew up with when the defense, with Brian Urlacher and everyone like that, they're the ones putting up the points. They're the ones bailing us out. Now, do I want them to do that again? No, I want the offense to put up the points. They can keep on kicking butt and keep on scoring and keep on doing all that. But like they were saying in the post-game interviews, Tyreek Stevenson was asked about it, and he was kind of just saying, they know that they know Caleb's going to have up and downs, but they're supposed to be that kind of kickstand to help them back up. But a couple other people that I just want to highlight. Jalen frickin' Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Jalen frickin' Johnson, okay? Number 1 out there, the true number 1. Just here's the stat, right? Because I was watching the game and I'm like, they've only targeted him 3 times. They did. They only targeted Jalen 3 times. Do you know what those results of those plays were? They targeted him 3 times. He allowed 1 catch, and that 1 catch was for -2 yards. The other 2 was that dropped interception, that forced incompletion, and then the second one was the interception. This is the thing that's crazy. What Jalen is doing right now, yet again, 1 game sample size, but in training camp, in preseason, he was still that guy. This is an outlier thing. You don't see someone come off such a dominant season and still look this dominant. Jalen Johnson, keep doing your thing. And he's not going against slouches at wide receiver. He's going against Calvin Ridley. He's going against, DeAndre Hopkins. And he's doing stuff like this. And they had Tyler Boyd. Very, very, very impressive with Jalen Johnson. And that, just the fact that it doesn't happen back-to-back seasons, yet again, 1 true game sample size, but like I said, training camp, he was doing so much of this stuff. Just absolutely crazy. Just great stuff. And the last other person that I want to highlight is TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards was flying out there, 15 tackles like we talked about, just looked really good. And also shout out to Tremaine Edmonds That's why he has that speed, for following that running back, making the tackle right before the line of scrimmage. Incredible play by him to really make that whole play. So great stuff for the Chicago Bears defense, and it just feels good. So let's see what else is out there. Shadrack saying Darrell Taylor was good. He's so good. Just that's the thing, right? Now let's see him next week, right? But if he can take advantage of bad tackle play, perfect. I'd rather have someone that can take advantage of bad tackle play than someone who doesn't do anything against bad tackle play like Rob, right? Great stuff from him for sure. And Broski, what's good, my friend? Saying, Brad, never again do I want to hear you pump up Bayless. Hey, man, I was not pumping up Bayless. I was just spreading the good word of Ryan Poles. But yeah, Bayless, oh man, we'll break them down with the special teams. And I think that's the thing, because funny thing, what we're talking about with, like last episode, for those that listened and watched when we were breaking down the award ceremony, we're talking about, okay, who's going to disappoint us? And ultimately it went down to Bayless and Nate Davis. And they disappointed us today. So I couldn't help but like kind of chuckle at that. Like, those were the two people that were like, they're probably going to let us down. And there you go. They let us down for sure. But also Shy Jack saying defensive play like that is unsustainable. Agreed. And Jason saying, I'm feeling like we have a very good defense, and offense is still gelling and getting used to offense first year. So I feel like we're going to be better and better each game. So he's feeling a little crazy. I like it. But yeah, and Broski, you perfectly summed this up with defense. This was typical Bears football right here. You know, same old type of thing. So let's flip over to our shaky offense, shall we? With just this offense, this is something that we want to break down. So keep in mind, our defense, their offense was negative 0.29 EPA per play, right? So expected points average, not good. Our offense was negative 0.32 per play, not good. So we were even worse statistically from the advanced metrics, but it wasn't good. And there's no sugarcoating it. That, like, I think if anyone tells you that Caleb Williams and like tries to fight for what Caleb Williams did is lying to you. Like, quite frankly, Caleb Williams had a bad game. There's no way of sugarcoating it. There was a lot of passes that were inaccurate. Yes, Keenan Allen dropped a pass that should have been a touchdown. And yes, a couple of those plays, there's a couple plays that should have been caught. But there was a lot of plays too, when you're watching him throw, that I'm like, that should have been closer to the receiver. That should have looked a little bit better. I thought that there was a handful of those plays that it just didn't look great. And yes, we'll talk about the offensive line. We will definitely talk about the offensive line. But this is where rookie jitters. This is his first game. This is the first thing out there. Build off of this. You saw the adversity. You saw that you didn't play well. What are you going to do next week? And the good part about Caleb Williams is that we've consistently heard he's going to keep on. He's been getting better and better and better. But the thing too is it felt off. The entire offense today just felt off. And something too, the running game wasn't there. And if we flip over to the running game, you see, like, I literally had in my notes the first two carries. I'm like, running offense looks good. And then we never saw it again. And we only saw 10 carries to Swift, yet again, like we said, for 30 yards. But when you look at the rest of the rushing, nothing really happened. And it didn't feel like the running game was gelling, didn't feel like they had an answer. And I felt like they were getting a little too cute with the running game. But yet again, what's a quarterback's best friend? Good running game, right? Like, they need a good running game with that. And just ultimately, Swift didn't do that. And I can tell you, when we do the advanced metrics show, there's some metrics that don't look favorable for DeAndre Swift because he could have gotten more yards. And yet again, below expected. There's a lot of below expected runs that Swift put on tape. So we'll break that down either tomorrow or on Tuesday. So something that we've really got to break down. Also, James, what is good, my friend? See you out there saying O-line looked really bad. And let's talk about the offensive line a little bit, shall we? So the offensive line, Yet again, this is first look. Like, I'm not rewatching this right now. I haven't rewatched it. But yeah, on first glance, we were wondering why there was a position battle at center, why Ryan Bates was their first go at the center position. And then, lo and behold, today, Coleman Shelton was awful, guys. Coleman Shelton, like, I had it in my phone where, he had a holding penalty. He let up that big 18-yard sack that ended up happening. I know I saw like Olin Kreutz, I saw like some people out there putting a lot of blame on Nate Davis for just kind of walking by. Not trying to defend Nate Davis by any means, but it looked like they were trying to do a screen to the left side. Maybe he was supposed to block that guy too, but ultimately Coleman Shelton just got manhandled by T'Vondre Sweat, who just kept making him like he owned Coleman Shelton. Everybody owned Coleman Shelton. Coleman Shelton kept on he got bulldozed by a linebacker. Like, Coleman Shelton did not look good at all. And there was a lot of like the big plays that happened was because Coleman Shelton was looking like Lucas Patrick out there. And we've said this before on the show, Coleman Shelton is a below average starter, but he looked really bad. He looked farther than below average. He looked way farther than that. And when you get that type of play, that becomes very difficult to play around. But the rest of the offensive line, we saw Nate Davis get benched. According to multiple sources, this is a benching, not an injury-related piece, because we haven't heard anything to this point about a Nate Davis injury. And it sounds like when he was brought to the sideline, they weren't running tests on him. Like, that's what they typically do. If you're hurt, they bring you over to the sideline, you meet with the trainers, they inspect you. There was nothing there. That was a true benching. So they bring in Ryan Bates. And then literally the first play, did y'all see that? Because I was like, who just got bulldozed? Ryan Bates got bulldozed. Like, you got to be kidding me. Then later on, Ryan Bates, he's still kind of nursing back from an injury. So we'll see what ultimately happens. Like, yet again, just a solid, adequate starter. I don't expect him to be a, crazy level starter. Like, he's been a career backup, career journeyman in that kind of space. But then everyone else, I thought Braxton Jones was getting pushed back a lot by Arden Key. He did get beat a couple times. I don't think it was a terrible thing overall with him, but I think overall, like, I didn't think Braxton Jones had a terrible game, but I think he could do better. And same thing with Tevin Jenkins. I think he could do better. And then last but not least, Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright, I thought, might have had the best game, even though that he let up a tackle for a loss from a cornerback. I thought overall he played I thought that he probably played the best. Do I think the offensive line was terrible? I don't think that it was terrible. I think that it was just Coleman Shelton just getting absolutely cooked all the time. But also, Shy Drax, supporter of the show, thank you so much, my friend. I actually got to update some of those things out there. I really do appreciate that. Thank you for joining being a member and joining. I do have to update some of those perks, so I will update that for y'all, but I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you. And yeah, thank you. So also too, with the offense overall, as well, like I said, running game, not great. Receivers, there's already some stats out there. Receivers weren't necessarily separating, but we said this too. They're a good defense. They're a very underrated defense. Like, you look at the line, pretty good line. You look at the corners, pretty good corners. So they played very well too. But yeah, the offense, we got to play better. But other things that I thought was interesting. Gerald Everett outsnapped Cole Kmet 34-27. Something, yet again, very interesting because Cole Kmet's a good tight end. So I thought that was, and we didn't see much of Gerald Everett out there. Also, Rome Odunze, 43 snaps. Keep in mind, Everett and Kmet, 34 and 27. Rome with 43. So Rome out there a lot. Might also be because Keenan Allen was banged up for a while. You got to throw Rome out there. And then Swift. So this is what we were talking about and why I literally put a bet on Swift getting over 43 yards, because I was like, they're going to give him the ball. He's going to be the bell cow. Swift, 39. He was out there 39 plays. Homer, 11 snaps. Herbert, only 6 snaps. And Valus, only 4 snaps. So that's something that I thought was very, very interesting as well, because here's like a lot of people were thinking this was going to be a running back by committee, but you heard a lot of the people that were at camp saying Swift is going to be the guy. Swift is going to be Swift is getting a lot of snaps. Swift's being put into a lot of these different plays. Swift 39 carries. I mean, 39 carries, 39 snaps. And Homer 11, which I was really kind of like, oh man, seriously. Now Homer played better than he has like in preseason, which was kind of crazy to say, but I still would like Roshan out there rather than Homer. But ultimately, this offense was gross. This offense was gross, and like a lot of us are saying, we need this to do better. We need this to play better. And James also saying out there, when the center gets blasted, it makes the whole offensive line not gel together. Agreed. Because like you see the dude just getting manhandled right in front of you, you're like, crap, right? Because now you got to go move. Now you got to go make some plays. And like I said, Caleb was just like, the throws were a little inaccurate. I'm glad that he ran the ball a little bit too. We don't want him to truly be a runner, but that's something that it was nice to see him kind of like take the ball and just get the first and do stuff like that. So also another thing that I saw too, you saw some of those quicker passes like we talked about as well. When he's playing within that structure, when he's playing with these quicker passes, you're like, okay, now we got something going. And also another side note that when we broke down Shane Waldron, the biggest thing that people were saying out of Seattle was he doesn't run the football enough. So this might have been one of those spots where, hey, why is the running game not getting set, not going as well as we kind of thought it was? Because this felt very like the pass happy offensive coordinators were, hey, we tried running it, didn't work, so now let's go pass the ball as much as we can. You have a rookie quarterback that's in his first game. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. So that's my feeling. But yeah, but last little bit, Shidrack saying Titans interior D-line is excellent. That is a big thing. Sebastian Joseph Day, Simmons, and also our boy, one of our favorite prospects during this whole draft process, Tavondre Sweat. Yeah, the guy can play football. That's what we all knew. Like, we all knew he could play some football, but man, he like that's a big man. That's a difficult person to go against. So now we're going to see what ultimately happens with the Texans next week. I believe we're already 6.5 point dogs. So there's that going on right now. Also, Tyler, what's good, my friend? Saying Caleb needs to throw more. Bayless is done. Defense is great. If the offense gets it together, they're going to be a playoff team. Agreed. Like, very, very well said. It's going to be that. It's going to come down to that for sure. So let's flip over to everyone's favorite subject, because this was one of our best units besides Bayless Jones, the special teams review. Let's break down the special teams because we got to see the crocodile punter today, unfortunately, many times. So we saw the crocodile punter out there, 6 punts, 270 yards. And so pretty darn good. His long was a 60-yarder, and he had 3 within the 20-yard line. There was one that went back for a touchback, to kind of start things off. But ultimately, good game for him, 45 yards per punt. But Cairo Santos, someone that we talked about as someone to watch out for because of new long snapper, new holder. Very difficult for a kicker to kind of have those new players in the same season. And also the new long snapper, a couple weeks before the season even starts. 3 for 3, long of a 50-yard field goal for Cairo Santos. Great game for Cairo. So big kudos to him there. But also, someone that was unbelievable, DeAndre frickin' Carter. We said to watch out for the punts, right? Like, because who's going to be returning it? Is it going to be DeAndre Carter? And for all those that know Johnny PayPal, I was talking to Johnny PayPal today, actually. He came over after the game, and we were talking, and he's like, man, I didn't think that DeAndre Carter should have been on this team. He's like, there's people that I didn't think should be on this team. Travis Homer and DeAndre Carter, and I can't believe they did so great. DeAndre Carter, we're going to talk about most valuable Bears after this. He might be up there because the dude had 1 kick return for 67 yards. And also, when you look at his punt returns, average of 12.8 yards a punt return, 20 yards was his long, and 5. So he had 5 for 64 yards. The guy looked good. The guy was breaking tackles. The guy looked great. DeAndre Carter did everything you wanted out of your return man. And then you see Velus Jones, right? Great special teams day for everybody else not named Velus. Now, the thing I did like was when Velus got the ball later, he held on to that sucker. But this is what we talked about. People were saying that this is his last shot. If you do something that can potentially cost this team the game, you get the door. Now we see. Is this the straw that breaks the camel's back? Because the one thing that you could talk about Velus Jones and say something good about him was his kick returning. That was his biggest thing. That was his claim to being on the team. He's the kick returner. He was one of the top, 5 in kick return yards on average. I don't have the stats in front of me. And you do that on your first kick. You do that on your kick return. You literally catch it, kick it to the other team. That's what you do. That is terrible. And I get it, right? People make mistakes, but you have people that make too many mistakes, too many bad mistakes. And those bad mistakes is what make bad teams bad teams. That's what happens. And ultimately, when you have somebody that does this too many times, you gotta show them the door. And it's hard because, they talk about this in Hard Knocks. He puts in all this work, and maybe it's just the cameras, maybe it's just the Hollywood stuff. But man, you got to be better. And Shy Drax says it. Had we lost, ... Exactly. If we lost, this is a different story. Now you're looking back at that fumble and you're going, you gave them this ball on the 30-yard line, the 40-yard line, whatever it was. Those are points. That's them being able to score on us. So that's something that is just ultimately frustrating. And, like I said, great special teams day. Let's not get that, let's not just have Velus kind of put the dark cloud over this. This was a great special teams day besides him fumbling that football. So big shout out to Carter. And honestly, we've talked about this on the show as well. I've always said Khalil Herbert should be he should be one of those kick returners back there. Why not try him? Because he has done very well at kick return. And that running back mindset should be pretty darn good. That's why I thought him and Velus were going to be back there rather than Carter. Now with this, put Carter and put Khalil Herbert back there. Those are the kick returners that I want to see. Have that combo instead. You got to trust your players. You need to make that connection. Maybe get the Browns on the phone or whoever that was and say, hey, you got that 4th round pick or whatever it is you wanted? Yeah, I changed my mind. You can have them. I fumbled that last thing. Okay, here you go. And then hang up, get that draft pick, ship him on his merry way, right? But ultimately, that was the downside with special teams. But also, I forgot one other thing I wanted to bring up with the defense before we get into most valuable Bears. The only, speaking of negative things, Velus got the negativity. We talked about the offense being bad. Now we talked about Velus. Now I'm pissed off at this team. So if we go over to the defense, the only other thing that I just want to highlight that we did in the season preview is that the Bears are going to be going against some of the best running football teams in the league. And you just allowed 5.4 yards a carry. So 5.1 yards with Tony Pollard, 5.3 with Tajay Spears. This wasn't just Will Levis scrambling and doing big plays like that. They were able to run the football on you. That, plain and simple. You have to be better with that. And this is a team that was the best. I don't have the exact stats. I know that they were definitely top 5 in run defense. This is a very good run defense team, and they just didn't look great out there. With the run stopping, just something that they weren't able to do. But then the pass coverage, they're like, all right, bring it on, Will Levis. We got you. And this is what we know. This secondary is crazy. This secondary is insane. The secondary is not going to let up easy passes. And the pass rush was looking good. But it's that run defense that we just need to make sure we hunker down, because we're going to go against better running attacks throughout this season. So you really, really have to focus and hunker down with that. So hopefully that gets better. Yet again, I need to rewatch the game to kind of see why a lot of those holes were opening up. But what it did seem like was when they started, they were running towards Montez Sweat. And Montez Sweat's like, all right, come here, man. And just like wrapping him up, taking him down. And then it seemed like they were like, hey, let's not run it his way. Let's run to the left. So then they ran it to the left. They go down. They score a touchdown. Then what I saw later on was that they shifted. Right after that, they moved Sweat over to the other side, over the left tackle. And then they got stuffed. So I think that there is something, like I really want to watch it to see who's out there. Was it because Chris Williams was there and we didn't have the same people, the bigger bodies, right? Was it Darrell Taylor, and was it and Chris Williams? Who was out there at those times? Something definitely to keep an eye on for this, because we do got to make it look good. Also, Bears Bones, what's good, my friend? Saying I was hoping Bayless would be good enough this year until Wheeler could come back and replace him. Yeah, like, I think that's another thing too, man. Like, guys, that's a good point, Bears Bones, because yeah, like if we had Wheeler, I miss Wheeler. I miss Eeyore, or whatever they were calling him. And Mandy, what's good? Hope you're doing well. Saying no, we can't trust Bayless. Exactly. Like, it's how much more can we put out there with Bayless, right? And ultimately, you just can't. You just can't. And Bears Bones saying Homer made some surprising good plays. Yeah, right? Like, Homer was halfway good. It was interesting. Then Shy Drax saying the Titans side run was hurting us, not up the middle. Yeah, that's true. There was a lot on that outside. I did see on like I think it was the touchdown run or like another big run, I saw Edmonds getting pushed back by like a wide receiver. I'm like, come on, man. You're like 260. He's like 120. He's like 180. Right? You kidding me, man? So, yeah, yet again, got to watch the tape. Got to see kind of what was going out there. But let's end this show on a high note, shall we? Let's talk about the most valuable Bear. And someone that I actually have not talked much about is this guy right up here to my top left, or top right for those that are watching. Mr. Tyreek Stevenson getting a pick 6. Now, is he my most valuable? No, I'm putting him up here as a potential candidate. So for all y'all that are watching, who's your most valuable Bear for the game? Who would you give the game ball out to? Because probably not anybody on offense. It shouldn't be anybody on offense. But I'll tell you, like, Stevenson had a great game too, having that interception, but also he always seemed to be around the ball. And that's what you want to see out of him this second year. Everything points to Tyreek Stevenson showing a lot better, like more so what he was doing last year, kind of carrying over, or at the end of last year, carrying over to this year. Because here's the thing, right? Truth be told, there's no such thing as something actually carrying over from last year to this year. It's more so, are you that player or not? And I think that that's where Tyreek Stevenson figured out who he was and really kind of understanding more of the NFL game. And now this is the player that he actually is. So Stevenson played very well. And also Kyler Gordon had a couple good stops too. None of the classic Kyler gigantic plays that we're accustomed to, but still looked to be solid out there. So now, who is the player of the game? And there's a couple people that I think are the official ones that are up there. For one, I think that I agree with Shy Drax. Definitely DeAndre Carter has to be up there because he consistently put the Bears in good field position. And he was just so freaking consistent. The 67-yard run back put them in phenomenal field position. And then you talk about his 20-yard punt return that he brought back. Another drive that he put the Bears in phenomenal field position. And when you do that, when you give them good field position, now you're kicking those field goals. Now we're getting those field goals in, which now it looks a lot better, right? Because we had 3 total field goals, and Carter had a lot to do with that, with the field position he was able to give us. And I agree, Shy Drax saying he gave us hope. Then you flip over to the defense, and then on the defensive side of the ball, T.J. Edwards had led the team in tackles, but I don't think he was that, like, he deserves to be the player of the game. And also 2 tackle for losses. Brisker had 10 tackles. Brisker looked good out there. But then you look at Darrell Taylor. And you look at this D-line, and the defensive line did play very, very well. Javon got a sack, looked good. Right, he was moving people. But Darrell Taylor, out of all those, is the other candidate I feel on the defensive line where he just looked crazy. Also, Tyreek's interception return, I forgot to mention this, no slouch of an interception return too. Like, that was hard to kind of get that ball, return it, and I liked it. I don't know if any of you Bears fans like this one a little bit more, because when we were pressuring Will Levis, and Will Levis kind of threw it out to the side, kind of like threw it out as this little, like, it was kind of this little lateral. Like, it literally looked like a lateral, not an actual throw. I don't know. I thought that should have been a fumble because it looked like a lateral, not an actual legitimate throw, just trying to toss it. So I loved it that he tried to toss it again and then pick six. So, and then two, Jalen Johnson, for being so locked down on his side. Like, literally, you couldn't have a better game. One catch for -2 yards, blows up that screenplay too. Just incredible game for him, getting an interception, pass breakup. But I feel bad if DeAndre Carter. I'm gonna give 2 game balls. I'm gonna cheat. This is week 1 because I feel bad giving it out to a special teamer because I think Carter to me I honestly think that Carter to me had, like, to put everybody in that position. I was like, I'm going to give the ball to Carter, and that's who I was going to go after. But then you see what Taylor did. So, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to give the ball to DeAndre Carter. I'm going to say that Carter to me was the bear of the game just because what he was able to do out there, just because the consistency that he played with, and just did his job any way that he could. And then honorable mention, Darrell Taylor, because you're talking about the strip sack, you're talking about the other sack as well, and just consistently putting pressure on the quarterback. Great game. Don't want to diminish what Taylor did, but just great games for those. But ultimately, we came away with the dub, and that's what we wanted, because yet again, these next 4 weeks, I was projecting 2-2. If you can get out of this with 2-2, you're going to be going against the Texans next week. Then what? After that, let me just pull up the schedule real quick, because you have Texans, then the Colts, then the Rams. So the Rams and Lions right now are tied up. So the Rams are going to be pretty good this year. I think they're going to be solid. They're coached by McVay. They're going to be difficult. And then the Colts looked pretty good. We're really close against the Texans, and Texans figured out who they were later on in the game. And still, it's going to be a tough matchup. But make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching out there. And make sure, if you're listening to the podcast, rate it 5 stars for sure. Because you know, like I said, I'm a podcaster. So if you rate 5 stars, that is what, like, it helps the show out tremendously. And also, right at the very end, a moment of clarity coming in with a $2 super chat. My friend, thank you so much, saying Hardy turned the tide of the game. That's the other thing, too. I can't believe I went this long without shouting out Hardy. So thank you for that. Thank you for the $2. Thank you. And also, thank you for also bringing up Hardy, because Hardy was the one that did swat that down and hit and blocked the punt ultimately. And also, too, Jonathan Owens, yet again, another play similar to like the Tyreek Stevenson pick 6, a lot harder than what we really saw out there, because for him to just literally see the ball and just pick it up on the move like that, that is challenging. Especially, it's easy for us to see because we see the ball, but like he kind of said it, he just kind of heard that it sounded like somebody blocked it. He's kind of looking for the ball, sees it, picks it up, brings it back for 6 points. Amazing there. Just crazy game. I don't want another game like this. I'd like our offense to at least shoulder it, but it's going to be challenging going on the road, going against DeMeco Ryans and the Texans. But you already know we will have you covered here. So I'll be breaking down the advanced metrics either tomorrow or Tuesday. Just want to make sure I have all the metrics necessary to really kind of give you guys this holistic view of what was going on in the game. Just kind of that deep dive that you know that you get here. And then we'll be previewing the Texans and how the Bears could potentially pull off the upset with the Texans. Already almost a 7-point dog already. So we'll see. But like I said, make sure to like and subscribe out there. I appreciate all the support. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, We are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad